looks like we're heading into overtime.
And the home team scores! Only 2 minutes remain in the match. And that's a 30-second warning. And this match is going to end in overtime. And with that point, away team wins the match.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's get ready for sports ball. And it looks like there is a timeout on the field.
Okay, we're back. And the home team scores.
Dudelings version 1.2, codenamed Second Base, is complete, and it launches tomorrow. I wanted to quickly run through the changes coming to the game, as well as some of the challenges that I faced while developing it. First, let's start with the challenges. Now, it's no secret that I'm a programmer by trade, but I didn't program Dudelings. I had never written a single line of GDScript until May, in fact. I had a programmer on staff who did all of that work. I was more the director. I did the pixel art and I financed the development. But unfortunately, I had to take over doing updates myself. And this meant taking apart the game, studying the code, learning Godot, and coming to grips with GDScript's Python-like syntax. Doing all of that simultaneously, alongside the rest of my daily responsibilities, was daunting, to say the least. Part of me just wanted to say, the game's done, it's out the door, I'm not going to do anymore. But I couldn't just leave it that way. I had too many cool ideas to add to the game. So I took it upon myself, blocked out some time in my fairly hectic schedule, and finished the update for Dudelings. So when I started out this update myself, the scope of the project was fairly small. I didn't know what I was going to be capable of actually doing with this update. But as I got my bearings and I realized just how simple and fast it was to pick this up, I was able to expand the scope and turn this into what I think is actually a fairly large content update. Now, PHP is my favorite programming language, and I do a lot of programming in JavaScript as well. So coming from the web dev world, PHP and JavaScript, Godot script was kind of a culture shock to me. It doesn't help that Python is my least favorite modern programming language, and GDScript is inspired by Python. So it's fair to say that GDScript was the greatest hurdle to clear when developing this update. But then there was Godot. Godot's model of everything as a node was hard to come to grips with. In Godot, everything exists as a node in a scene. And with Godot, you can't really avoid using the editor GUI. If you try to, you can, but it will also make everything much harder. Now, I've started to understand Godot. It's been making more and more sense to me as time has gone on. And one thing that I appreciate about it is its API. It's easy to use and it's predictable, which is really important for an API. Another plus is the documentation. If you have questions about how anything works, you can just look it up. And by the time you're done reading 2 or 3 pages of documents, you are generally armed with all of the info you need to solve your problem. Then there's the community. The folks in the Godot forums and the various communities on Reddit and Discord have been able to resolve so many issues. Plus, Godot Steam is a tremendous resource that provides access to the Steamworks API natively in GDScript. It's actually how I was able to implement Steam achievements and the other Steam integrations into this build. I want to give a major shout out to Godot Steam's maintainer, Gramps. He's incredibly friendly and super helpful. Now, I had to lean on him for support because of some ridiculous bug that I introduced into the game when I first started working on this update. He was able to resolve my issue in less than 24 hours, so thank you to Gramps. I really appreciate your help. And speaking of the Steamworks API, I was able to integrate Steam into the game. But don't worry, if you bought the game on itch, it remains DRM free. The itch build still works just fine, only without Steam support. The first thing that I did was add a button prompt to the Steam build that will start an online session through remote play. This is when you're configuring who's playing the game, so I really hope that this encourages folks to play this with their friends over the internet, as it is really a fun way to play the game. I've also enabled family sharing, which I didn't realize was something that I had to do manually. Similarly, Steam Cloud saves are now supported as well. This should keep your stats in sync across devices. And speaking of, I've added player stats tracking. So now you have career scores, your win and losses, your number of punches dealt and received, favorite game mode, and more. They're all being tracked locally on your machine. You can see your stats from the stats button on the main menu too. Now, originally, I wanted to track every game that was played and every possible metric that could be counted. Punches thrown, punches received, match duration, score, etc., etc. Coming from the backend server world, I was like, hey, this is a great application for a database. So I found an SQLite plugin for Godot. I built out a system to create, read, update, and destroy match data. And then I realized how terribly optimized the database would be for this task. It was also quite unstable. Not the plugin, mind you, it was my implementation. So I scrapped that. I just threw it away and I started counting stats with a much simpler solution. Just values in memory being updated on the fly. I added stat tracking to more easily implement Steam achievements, and there are currently 15 achievements, maybe even 16 by the time it goes live, and they added some goals to the gameplay, something to build up to. And other new stuff in the game. I've created a new game mode called Pins. In a game of Pins, your job is to control the ball and hit your ball into your opponent's pins, which will then knock them down. Once their last pin is downed, you earn a point and their pins reset. But be careful because your pins won't reset until they score a point on you. I have to be honest, this is now my favorite game type, and I have had a blast both developing and debugging this. Alongside this new game mode, I've updated how match setup works. Each game mode now has its own default rule set. For example, Hoop now defaults to using the bowling ball. And then in Pins, it defaults to using the beach ball because it's more bouncy and it just provides more good feedback when you're playing. Plus, pickups are also turned off by default in Pin mode. But I also added some new rules, timed matches being the big one here. Now, these timed matches are awesome because the score is uncapped. So you have until the timer runs out to score the most points possible. And if you're tied when the timer runs out, the match goes into overtime, where the next player to score is the winner. All right, next up, we have new announcer voices, and I wanted to give a special thank you to Bill from Nerd Nest and Rich from Fan the Deck for joining the Dudelings cast of announcers. When you boot up the game, you can head into the settings and choose from Emily, Bill, Rich, or myself. There are also now new announcer lines to go with the new game rules. I've added 2 new arenas to the game. The first is called Gym, and it's based on a high school gymnasium complete with bleachers and your mom. It's got a nice cozy feel, and it reminds me of the gym that I went to when I went to high school for like 30 seconds. The other arena is unlockable, and I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. I've added 2 pickups to the game. The first is the switch pickup. The icon are these 2 opposing arrows. When the ball touches this pickup, it will switch to the other team's possession. You can actually cancel any pickup just by touching it with a doodling. The other pickup is the black hole, which will swallow up the ball and a moment later, spit it out somewhere else in the arena. The black hole in particular keeps the ball's momentum when it reappears. So I've found that it's actually wise to take up a defensive position as the black hole is activated. These 2 pickups add a little bit of spice to the gameplay. Finally, I've added a What's New screen to the game that will show up on first launch when a new update takes effect. Plus, there's a button on the main menu which will show the What's New screen again. This screen details the latest and most important changes to the game, and after every major update, this screen will show again at first launch. There's a ton of new features to discover that you can check out with the link below. As for fixes and improvements, let's talk about match setup. I've streamlined the game's setup menu. It used to go from pick a game type to choose a game arena, then select a team, and then match setup. But this has been revamped in order to make game setup simpler. First, pick a team, then choose a game type, and finally, choose an arena. On the Choose Arena screen, you can press Select on your gamepad or E on your keyboard to open up the match setup menu. We've actually added this button here as well, in case you're using a mouse to drive your configuration. Now this is nice because the rules are remembered between matches, so once you set it up, you don't have to adjust it again unless you want to change something. And you might have noticed that the match setup screen has been streamlined too. Version 1.0's match setup was a confusing list of features with a ton of text, icons, and a blend of focusable elements. It was not really intuitive to navigate with a gamepad, so that's why I felt it was necessary to simplify. This new menu is based on the settings submenu that we already had in the game, and I really feel like it's a huge improvement here. Okay, now we need to talk about the actual gameplay and balancing. And the first thing that I wanted to adjust was the difficulty. The hard and impossible AIs were behaving in a way that I found a little jarring. They'd start and stop movement in weird and unpredictable ways, so I adjusted their behavior. Now their movement is a little more fluid, and this also results in them being a bit more difficult, but I think that's okay. Another balancing change was a common complaint that I found in the Steam forum. The bowling ball was just too heavy and it felt glitchy, so I've reduced its weight and it's made a big difference. I've also reduced the bowling ball's weight and I've increased its friction so that it feels really different from the rest of the balls. The new update hits tomorrow, so make sure that you check it out. It's a free update, meaning that if you already own Dudelings, this update is automatically applied on Steam, and if you own it on itch, you can download the new update there for free. If you don't own the game, you can pick it up with the top link in the description or the pinned comment. Now, I've spent the last 2 months on this update, getting it ready and out the door for you guys, so I really hope that you enjoy it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments or on the forums or even the new Discord that I just spun up, and I'll see you guys next time.